Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Video Mail for the week of February 2nd, 2015. Welcome to the site to you new members, and welcome back to the old members. The Ask Video Mail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one. I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. There's no such thing as a stupid question, of course, and it is the best way to get the most out of the site. Don't forget, this is the address to send those questions to, webmaster@KennyRoy.com. Please send in questions. You can also send in your Maya files. Last month's lecture was a little Maya demonstration on a Maya scene file that was sent to me by a member. That's pretty cool. It's pretty rad, right? Get a little bit of personalized help. While I have your attention here, I just would like to say that the Anim Gym is still open for business, guys, and I do think that it is probably one of the most valuable resources that is here on the site. You get a personal critique for entering into the Anim Gym. You would have to win the 11-second club in order to get a critique from a professional animator without paying for one. Okay, you would have to win the 11-second club. I'm doing it for all members that enter the Anim Gym. Every single one of you get a critique. And I'm disappointed. Last month's January Anim Gym only one entry again. There was one in December and one in January. And I can understand maybe December being a little bit, or sorry, it was November. We took December off. I can understand November being a little bit, winding the year down and stuff like that. But let's recommit to workflow here, guys, and do some more practice. All right. So I want to see a few more faces in the Anim Gym, please. That said, I just had to take advantage of while I have you here, okay? So if you are planning on doing the Anim Gym or you've already started your entry for February, good for you, great job. I'm looking forward to seeing it and critiquing it. Okay, so that's it for news. I've gotten pretty much totally positive feedback on the redesign of the site. Seems like everyone pretty much likes it. I'm not sure how you would not like it over the old design of the site, but I guess there are a few outliers out there. I haven't met any yet, though, so I'm pretty happy with the redesign, and it seems like you guys are too. Don't forget, you can also use the new Facebook comments to comment on stuff, and that's exciting. Aren't we all happy about that? Yes, we are. And if I'm not mistaken, that would be all the news for today. So let's get to the question. Check it out. What tangents do I use for tempo and why? It's interesting. I have a set of tangents that I think I've told you guys about before, why I do it. But for tempo, it's especially good, and for, well, I think that maybe there's a reason to go so far as to say that tempo includes these tangent choices. So basically, what it is as you are keying, because there's such thing as stepped preview. I key in clamped. And then when I turn off step preview, I go to auto tangent, and here's why. It's very simple, but it is pretty specific, and here's why. So I've always talked about how when you're making your tangent choices that you have to be vigilant in what those choices are. Okay, so let me show you why that's important. Here we have. Actually, let's make them a little bit more varied. Okay, so here we have some keys. Okay, and I'm going to connect these with a line, and you're going to see some things. So spline means that basically it's going to, as smooth as possible, it's going to interpolate between these keys. That was pretty good. I missed the last third one, but okay. Or fourth one. So as smooth as possible. With Clamped, what it does is it tries to create flat tangents within a certain tolerance. Autotangent does as well, but the way that it works it is just slightly different. Clamp will also always create a flat tangent at the beginning of the first key and the last key. Okay, so the way that clamped would work is it would probably make this straight and then be almost the same, and then it would make this a flat tangent as well. Okay. Flat obviously doesn't make much sense for anything that we're trying to do, because flat makes every single tangent flat. And when you have these, it comes to a halt in the middle of your animation, it's very jarring and it's no good. Okay, autotangent again is what it tries to do is when you're creating a new keyframe, as you're moving it up and down, it will either be splining it, or if you bring it up, it will flat it between these two keys. Okay. But why do I choose clamped? Because in stepped mode, your keys go like this. They are static keyframes until the next key, when it changes instantaneously. That's the way that stepped works. If you are looking at animation that for the most part is an extremely tight transition on what are called copied pairs, this is what this looks like, basically. Right? This is what this looks like. It's basically copied pairs, okay? And with copied pairs, these transitions are not this tight. You might have a copied pair that's like right here, and then a transition that goes, like this, right? And then another one right here, and then a transition to this. Okay, so copy pairs is a way to get extremely snappy pose-to-pose animation quickly. Okay, so that's copy pairs. But because you are effectively going to go from this, excuse me, I can hear myself in my head again. Got the fluid in my ear. We're effectively going to go from this, if you just click on spline, to this. You can almost look at this as the delta in these keyframes is the difference in the expectation to the reality. And this is where a lot of animators get all screwed up, because if this area basically represents the difference between what you see while you're blocking and when you click spline, then your workflow should be basically reorganized to make it so that what you're seeing as you're creating it and as you're getting inspired by these new timing choices you're making with tempo, okay, that you can be sure, or you can rely upon with much greater success to be getting what you're actually seeing when you go to spline. Okay, so this is the difference between spline and stepped. But with tempo, what I do frequently is I will, knowing where I am, and that I'm keying and clamped, and that the way that Maya works is that clamped key is going to be flatted where the transition was within a certain tolerance. Okay? Oops. I will, where I know that I want that hold, I will explicitly create that hold by just boom, popping a key right there. Just laying it down, and then boom, we've got the I'll show you what the expectation ends up being. Okay. Now, if I know that this is supposed to be a long transition to the next pose, then I'll do that. Okay. Then I'll just leave this right here. Okay. Typically, I'll add a breakdown at some point in the splining phase. And while this whole thing is broken for that 10 or 15 minutes right after you click spline, and it is for everybody, but during that little amount of time, I will be going back and searching out just for these moments, just for these parts where there was a long transition and the stepped really does not hold up to the splined curves once I've removed the step preview. But as you can imagine, if this is my expectation, okay, then there is no delta here. There's only a little bit right here, and that's fine. That's fine to deal with. Okay, so with tempo, because we are using this, we are using the stepped. We are using this stepped preview to give us the ability and sort of like the flexibility, rather, of making very, very quick timing decisions, moving, single frames left or right. Oh, do you see that? That was crazy. It smoothed after I left that stroke. Moving them left or right, one frame this way, 2 frames that way, just really like laying down the keyframes and sort of wiggling into the right choices. Because we are relying on tempo in that way, then keyframe control is super important, and and I feel like the workflow should be clarified a little bit. No longer should there be this moment where you click spline and you have to go through that thing that we always go through, where our scenes are totally screwed up and it's a matter of the best animators can fix it quickly. I don't think that that's a part of the job anymore, honestly. Maybe a little bit, but with stepped preview and having there be just a small little moment where you are explicitly creating your holds wherever you want them to be. Maybe this is not supposed to be a hold, and then a hold right here, so that when you spline it, you get what you're actually expecting. I think that will save a lot more time in the long run. So we are I don't want to harp too much on the difference between the way the different schools do it, and truthfully, I do only know how Animation Mentor presents their curriculum in terms of tangents and stuff like that. But I will say, in even trying to avoid, basically, bringing the whole show down, that the Pixar method, I'll go there, but they can take it. The Pixar method of creating CG animation is, by and large, a remnant of 2D animation. It's a remnant of traditional animation, where you had to have the masters create the key poses, and they would time it, and then in-betweeners would come and basically draw the in-between frames. And what that does is that really puts a huge amount of the emphasis on the choices of the animator at the beginning, as far as the poses that were going to arrive on those frames. Really, if you have a thumbnailing as part of your workflow, the posing is sort of still done the same way. You'll draw a pose, one of your dream poses of your character, and pardon me, you'll draw one of your dream poses of your character, and then it will eventually find its way into the animation if you can get the timing to work right. But if the timing starts giving you really serious trouble, then you start having to make sacrifices on pose. But for the most part, the workflow that is taught by schools that are trying to get students into feature animation houses like Pixar, that workflow takes basically a translated approach where they took what happened in 2D for so many years, and they're trying to basically just like continue those methods. And I feel that the newest workflows and the best workflows take advantage of the tools that we have in front of us. And I'm not necessarily convinced that if the computer had been around in Walt Disney's time, if they would have been, drawing these key poses or the keyframe animators, rather, like, the 9 Old Men, would be making those key poses, and then in-betweeners coming in and cleaning up the in-between frames. Or these days, it's the same person, right? It's the same person. It's you, right? You make your key poses, and then you sort of like clean up the crappy in-betweens that Maya gives you. It's sort of the same process, though. Essentially, it's the same amount of work, and it's the same mindset, where you're acting as the keyframer, and then you're sort of in betweening your own shot. Tempo doesn't start anywhere near that approach. It doesn't have any of the at all, really. It doesn't have any of the same sort of emphasis on pose that the Pixar workflow does. And for that reason, I think that it actually takes a lot better advantage of the tools that we have. So bringing this back to the question, your tangents with the sort of like the Pixar method of animating, your tangents were almost always sort of considered something that had to be dealt with. Eventually it had to be like just dealt with, and I don't think that that's necessary anymore. I think that we can actually say that if you do it right, if you animate with tempo and then you take a moment to predict and sort of condition and set up that transition from step to spline, then you're no longer having to come up as like the lowly in-betweener and try to make what the keyframer did a while ago work. You have far fewer fights between yourself and your former self, the keyframer self. You have far fewer fights with the work in front of you. There's not a bowl of spaghetti in the graph editor, and you don't really know how to sort it out. You're not fixing anything. It's always forward progress. I think I showed you guys I've shown you this many times, where the best workflow, or the best animators rather, here's the start of a shot, A, and here's Z. All right, they don't go like this. They don't go straight shot from A to Z. Okay, student workflows is kind of like this. You're trying to do this, and you end up going like this. Because you're trying to be perfect, you stumble, you go backwards on a shot, and sometimes you just have to go all the way back and try again from different areas. Okay? And then finally you get there, if you get there at all. The tempo workflow is this. Okay? Notice, though, that even though it has tangents that you go off on, tangents that are explorations of certain ideas in tempo, you've seen me do it a dozen times now. Those explorations take minutes, not hours or days. Okay? So you find the best one and you just keep on moving. But notice how after this is an experimentation mode. It's a moment in your work. It's a moment in the progress of the shot where you're actually taking the time to experiment. Okay? So it's not lost work. It's actually improving all the time. And the motion is always forward. You are actually always making progress. Okay? Whereas if you're trying to be perfect, then you have the potential to go backwards. Actually, you know what? I will go so far as to say that this is not actually the workflow of students. It's actually a little bit more like this. Okay, now here's where Z is, and let me explain what's going on here. This is the easy part, blocking and doing like your layouts and thumbnails and planning and whatever. But then you start getting into it and it doesn't work. And you go back and you just start going backwards again. And you keep on doing that and you make a little bit of progress, but it's a lot of hard progress because it's in difficult directions. Here's where you want to be. You start skewing all over the place. And then finally, there is the moment when you click on spline, and in terms of the progress of the shot, you go all the way back here, okay? And then you have to make a big change, like, oh no, he's not supposed to jump in the air, he's supposed to slide in. And then you get all the way there, and then you just never make it past a certain point with the shot. You keep on having setbacks that send you back here. And there's all this space to go, and you never quite make it. That's kind of what I've observed. It's sort of a combination between these workflows. Okay. Anyway, I don't mean to harp too much. I don't need to stand up here, for 20 minutes and say students suck. That's not the point here. The real point I'm trying to make is all of these seem like a very simple question, but it actually is pretty complex because I feel like all of these aspects of the tools that we're using need to start being considered as part of the workflow. One of my frustrations with all curriculums is that they say that everyone has their own workflow and whatever works for you. I don't know. I don't know anymore. I feel like there are basically empirical tests that we can do to see if no one should ever use linear ever. And I bet you we could come up with an assessment like that. Like linear has no place in any workflow anymore. And if you are getting great results because you're using linear, you would, if you were committed to putting the time in to learning this workflow, you'd be even better than you are. So if you're doing like solid, like B plus A minus kind of work, you'd be an A, solid A plus animator if we can come together and agree on what those workflow choices are. Anyway, sorry I went on a rant on this, but to answer the question, key with clamped but in stepped preview, and then you don't go to spline anymore, you just turn off stepped preview. But before you do that, set up all of your holds by laying keys down in the stepped preview with basically copied pairs. And then I switched to auto tangent so that the way that Maya decides whether to flat or to spline something is being applied, because at that point I'm pretty much adding breakdown. So I do want Maya to be sort of doing its best to make my tangents work as I'm in that phase of the shot. So anyway, great question, guys. Don't forget to send your questions in. Even send me your Maya files. I'll open them up on camera, and we'll see what's going on. See if I can help you out. I know I can. Please use me. I'm your resource. I'll see you guys in the Anim Gym. I'm Kenny Roy. Good luck with your animation. As always, rock on.